based on real accounts. It was during one of the first heavy storms of spring 1998 when the following event occurred. It was a thrasher. The winds fierce, pulverizing our 100-year-old oak tree. The first time I'd ever seen it bend. Its trunk was unbelievably wide and cumbersome, and yet I thought it might get torn out by the roots. The darkening of the evening sky generally fell upon the town at around 7:30 p.m. However, at 5:45, the blackening clouds rolled in, lumbering overhead at a snail's pace, so dark that all of the streetlights flickered on in unison. The nimbus clouds, the lowest ones, were speeding and ramming into one another, while the wise old owl, the cirrus clouds, miles into the troposphere, watched over them like a grandfather with an angry eye. The warmth of the front began to pour in as the winds transitioned from a howl to a roar, leaves swirling up into massive circular patterns, lightning striking through flashes that could have been seen from space, illuminating briefly the atmospheric, metallic skies. The National Weather Service instituted an advisory to stay indoors. It was going to get bad. Soon enough, the raging winds began battering the side of our house, the windows making crackling sound, almost as if they were bending inwards. The wind chimes rattling like 100 chains. The lightning seemed to be striking every few seconds. An electrical storm, I muttered. Suddenly, just before the rain began to pummel us, the lights across our entire district and inside our houses had went out. I looked out the window. Yeah, they're all out. We lit a candle and sat, my wife hugging our shaking dog, while I sipped a beer and watched. The clouds directly above our house were beginning to form a circular pattern. Do you see that? How could I not? She chided, with an air of both astonishment and dread. Did they mention tornadoes? No, not that I can think of. The encircling cloud ceiling had formed what resembled a hurricane's eye. Do you see that? I see that. Eerie. Really eerie. Suddenly, the TV flicked back on. Static laced with a high-pitched, cacophonous beeping sound. Wow, that was quick. However, what was displayed on our screen was not anything either of us had ever seen. It appeared to be an advertisement of some sort, for what looked like some kind of aircraft. Odd markings, almost resembling Egyptian hieroglyphics, scrolled across the screen in a backwards, rectangular pattern, moving along the borders, up and around, before fading into different symbols, as if meant to be read backwards. We didn't say anything at first, just stared. Thunder shook the foundation of our house. I looked out the window, and through the prevailing gusts and swirling debris, I noticed clearly that not one house on our block had the blue hue of a television emanating from their living room. Only us. The picture on the screen was unusually high. Resolution, far beyond what our cheap TV, or any TV, should have been capable of in 1998. Imagine a Vizio P-Series Quantum X Ultra High Resolution picture on a 1995 Panasonic piece of junk. And the show began to get even more bizarre. The mysterious markings continued moving about the screen as a sizable aircraft was displayed performing several, seemingly impossible aerial maneuvers, riding over dark, gaseous, almost neon green clouds, weaving through a strange, upside-down, positively massive monochrome-colored city with unrealistically tall, thin structures, lacking windows. The sky was down, instead of up, while the footage displayed the craft's various unfathomable aeronautical capabilities, moves which, as a person who used to be a helicopter engineer, I know would not be mathematically possible with our current technology anywhere in the world. Not for even a stealth bomber. This was a perfect circle made of a material that looked black and rubbery, performing inconceivable movements, speeding, then stopping dead, shooting downwards into the clouds, rolling, and back up, before accelerating once more, and the camera moved with it in flawless synchronization. The narrator produced the shrill, high-frequency vocalization of what a 4-year-old girl on amphetamines might be able to pull off. A spirit speaking through the conduit of white noise, artificially accelerated. No, it can't be. My wife and I were stunned. The picture is just gorgeous, my wife said, amazed. I agreed. It was practically 3D. Surely this was an elaborate hoax. An avant-garde trailer for a big-budget sci-fi adventure movie. We tried calling the neighbors. No dial tone. We called 911. Then, an automated, robotic voice swapped out the other, more human one we've been hearing. This was unbelievably disquieting, to say the least. What's the address of your emergency? I apologize in advance, but I just wanted to ask why our neighbors don't have electricity, and we do. Nobody has electricity. The cable lines have been torn out from the wind, but we have TV. You have TV? Every cable line, phone line, and transformer is down countywide. The storm is still going, and it's gonna be a while before they get it back up. But seriously, our TV. Sir, it's a crime to prank call an emergency line. So, if you don't have an emergency, the call will be terminated. I didn't want further trouble, so I hung up. Let me guess, cable is out. Power lines are down. And we're watching some supernatural, ghostly TV show from the distant future. Cable's out, was all I managed to utter. She gave me a confused, even frightened, glance, smirked, and went back to staring at the screen transfixed. The transmission cut to and ended with an unsettling vision, black and white footage of a gaunt, pale man and woman, both stripped naked and heads covered in a dark hood, both being hanged from a branch, thrashing violently, struggling to set themselves free, suffocating, and levitating over a foggy, babbling brook when, in plain English, the following message was relayed, still, in an automated, yet slower, male voice. Commanders and authority of humanity, you must abandon your weapons. In the near future, there shall be a mass awakening through one infallible, collective conscience. Achieve this, or you will die. Finally, it cut out altogether, and we once again were left illuminated only by a dim, velvet candle in pitch darkness, listening to the wind rustle. We were unable to move, both petrified in a state of terror. The broadcast must have lasted 3 minutes, at most. The rumbling of the thunder and flashing of lightning began to dissipate and move on to the next town. I was in shock, continually pressing on the power button. That's no movie preview, my wife said, before she placed her palm over the remote in my hand as I compulsively clicked the power button over and over. Stop, she whispered. I could feel her physically shaking. I turned to her and said, I don't know what I just saw. All she could let out was a soft, subdued, I'm scared. As nature's havoc finally rescinded, it got quiet. Very quiet. An almost inaudible rumbling of an engine reverberated from somewhere outside. I looked out the window. A black, unmarked SUV very slowly pulled up alongside the front yard, just across from the living room window. I watched as the passenger side window of the vehicle rolled down, and a pale, white face in a black rain hat leered at us. 10 minutes went by. 15. 20, and finally, after my wife told me she was afraid, I walked out and approached them. The man smiled and politely tipped his black-rimmed hat at me as I acknowledged with a nod. Hi, what can I do for you gentlemen? The man flashed his credentials. Department of State Bureau of Intelligence and Research. Oh wow, what brings you guys out here tonight? Well, we got a call of a possible break-in. All of the cruisers are out dealing with car accidents, so they sent us. Are you all right? Yeah, we're fine. No offense, sir, but you've been out here for a half an hour. Well, we had to be certain, that's all. So, everything all right? He was dressed in what looked like an expensive suit and tie, all dark blue, or maybe black. Yeah, there's no break in here. As I said, we had to be certain. He then handed me something, a white business card with his name, entitled Trinkelly, a bizarre name, indeed, before making one more, slightly offhanded remark. Give me a call if you see any good movies. Sir? I queried. No movies tonight? Nothing on TV? Our power is out. Is it really? He just stared intently into my eyes, his pupils eerily dilated, dark circles around his eyes, like bruises, waiting in silence for a good 10 seconds before he spoke once more. You have a nice night. Storm's over. He smiled and began rolling up his window as the vehicle drove off. A nonverbal threat. As I walked back in, my wife immediately noticed my demeanor. Jesus, Cal, you look like you've seen a ghost. Who was that? I handed her the card and told her, probably best not to tell anyone about any of this. I don't think we were meant to see it. I think it was an accident. What exactly did the man say to you? He asked me if we had a break-in, that's all. She looked down at the card and then up at me in dead silence. You're not telling the truth. I put my head down, nodding affirmatively. Are we safe? She asked anxiously. I could only hug her. She said one last thing, which I wholeheartedly agreed would be the best thing we could tell ourselves or anyone else. We didn't see anything.